Somewhere beneath a dark coastline, 6 Navy SEALs sit inside a flooded tube barely wider than a coffin. Their breathing apparatus is the only thing keeping them alive. The water is 62 degrees. They cannot see. They cannot surface. And the enemy has no idea they exist. The SEAL Delivery Vehicle, the SDV, is the most secretive insertion platform in all of special operations. It has carried operators into denied harbors, under hostile warships, and through minefields that would destroy any other craft. From the freezing waters of the North Atlantic to the contested shallows of the Persian Gulf, the SDV has written missions that will never appear in any official report. Tonight, we trace every known operation of this underwater ghost. In 1983, the United States Navy formally introduced the Mark 8 Mod 1 SEAL delivery vehicle into SEAL team operations. It replaced aging swimmer delivery systems that had served since the Vietnam era. The Mark 8 was not a submarine in the traditional sense. It was a wet submersible, meaning the operators inside were fully immersed in ocean water for the entire transit. There was no pressurized cabin, no warmth, no dry seat. The first operational deployment of the Mark 8 came during a classified maritime interdiction exercise off the coast of Puerto Rico in early 1984. A 6-man SEAL platoon launched from the dry deck shelter mounted on the back of the submarine USS John Marshall. The SDV detached at a depth of 60 feet and began its 3-mile transit toward a simulated hostile port facility. The pilot navigated using only a Doppler sonar velocity log and a simple depth gauge. No GPS existed yet. No digital mapping. The navigator plotted their course on a kneeboard strapped to his thigh. He updated their position every 90 seconds based on speed and heading alone. Halfway through the transit, the SDV's battery temperature spiked. The pilot reduced speed to 4 knots and adjusted buoyancy to compensate. Water temperature had dropped below 58 degrees. 2 of the rear operators were beginning to show signs of cold-induced motor degradation. Their fingers could barely grip the handholds. They reached the target pier in total darkness. The swimmers detached from the SDV. They placed simulated limpet charges on 3 target vessels. They returned to the vehicle within 14 minutes. The SDV then reversed course, navigated back to the host submarine, and docked inside the dry deck shelter without ever surfacing. The exercise proved that a small team could infiltrate a defended harbor completely undetected. No radar contact. No sonar return. No visual signature. The SDV was invisible. But invisibility came at a cost no other vehicle demanded. The operators were essentially riding inside a torpedo while breathing recycled air underwater for hours. That is why the SEALs gave it the name that stuck, the Coffin Ride. In January 1991, coalition forces were preparing for the ground phase of Operation Desert Storm. Iraqi naval mines had turned the northern Persian Gulf into a kill zone. Minesweepers were taking too long. The timeline was collapsing. SEAL team operators received orders to conduct covert hydrographic reconnaissance of the Kuwaiti coastline. They needed to map the depth, gradient, and obstacle density of potential amphibious landing beaches. They could not be detected by Iraqi shore patrols. 2 SDVs launched from a submarine operating south of Faylaka Island. The transit was 11 miles. Water visibility was less than 2 feet due to suspended silt. The SDVs navigated entirely by instruments. No visual reference. No external light. Upon reaching the survey zone, the operators exited the vehicles and swam toward the beach. They used handheld sonar probes and lead-weighted sounding lines. They measured bottom composition, recorded obstacle positions, and collected water samples. Iraqi sentries patrolled the shoreline less than 200 meters away. One team encountered an uncharted subsurface wire barrier at a depth of 4 feet. The navigator marked its GPS position using a tethered buoy with a delayed release timer. The buoy would surface 6 hours later, long after the team had extracted. This data was transmitted to the amphibious planning staff within 12 hours. The SDVs returned to the host submarine after 6 hours of total immersion. 2 operators required medical treatment for hypothermia. One had a core body temperature of 94 degrees. But the mission data they delivered shaped the entire amphibious deception plan. That plan drew Iraqi forces away from the actual coalition ground assault axis. The beach survey proved the landing was feasible, and the Iraqis believed it was coming. The SDV had helped win a battle without firing a single round. In 1998, U.S. Special Operations Command tasked SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1 with conducting a proof-of-concept mission. The target was a simulated foreign submarine base. The objective was to demonstrate that an SDV could penetrate a defended anchorage. It would attach surveillance devices to a moored submarine and extract without detection. The exercise took place at a naval facility in Scotland. Royal Navy surface patrols, underwater acoustic sensors, and harbor security boats were all active. The defending force knew an infiltration attempt would occur within a 72-hour window. They did not know when or from which direction. The SDV launched from a host submarine 12 miles offshore at 0300 hours. The pilot descended to 80 feet. That was well below the thermocline layer. This avoided detection by the harbor's passive sonar arrays. The transit took 2 hours and 40 minutes at a speed of 4.5 knots. At harbor entrance, the SDV settled onto the seabed at a depth of 90 feet. 2 combat swimmers exited. They carried a simulated acoustic monitoring device weighing 11 pounds. They swam 500 meters through the harbor using only compass and depth gauge. They stayed below the sonar detection floor. The swimmers located the target submarine, a decommissioned Trafalgar-class boat moored at Pier 3. They attached the device to the hull below the waterline in 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Then they returned to the SDV without surfacing. The entire penetration lasted 3 hours and 12 minutes. The defending force detected nothing. Post-exercise analysis revealed that no acoustic sensor, no camera, and no patrol vessel had registered any anomaly. The SDV and its operators had achieved what the exercise directors called a zero-trace result. This mission established the doctrine that SDVs could serve not just as insertion vehicles but as intelligence platforms. They could deliver payloads to targets that no other platform could reach without compromise. The North Atlantic in winter is one of the most hostile operating environments on Earth. Sea temperatures hover around 34 degrees. Currents are unpredictable. Visibility is measured in inches. In 2003, SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2 conducted a cold weather qualification exercise off the coast of Norway. The objective was to validate SDV operations in Arctic conditions. Specifically, they needed to determine the maximum safe transit time before operator cold injury rates became unacceptable. The SDV launched from a dry deck shelter aboard a Virginia-class submarine operating beneath the Norwegian Sea. Water temperature at launch depth was 36 degrees. The operators wore dry suits with thermal undergarments. But the SDV's open cockpit meant they were fully submerged in near-freezing water for the entire transit. The first phase, a 7-mile transit to a simulated target, took 1 hour and 50 minutes. At the 40-minute mark, the rear operators reported loss of finger dexterity. At 60 minutes, the navigator's handwriting on his kneeboard became illegible. By 80 minutes, 2 operators could no longer operate their equipment latches without assistance. The team reached the target. They completed their simulated sabotage task. They began the return transit. Total immersion time reached 3 hours and 40 minutes. When the SDV docked inside the dry deck shelter, one operator was unable to climb out of the cockpit without help. His core temperature had dropped to 91 degrees. That was moderate hypothermia. The exercise established a hard operational limit: 90 minutes of continuous cold water transit for combat-effective performance. Beyond that, degradation was too severe for mission-critical tasks. This finding directly influenced the development requirements for the next-generation advanced SEAL delivery system. That system would finally give operators a dry, pressurized cabin. The cold did not care about courage. The cold was the mission's true enemy. In 2006, SEAL team operators used SDVs to conduct one of the most sensitive intelligence-gathering operations of the post-September 11th era. The target was a foreign naval vessel anchored in a commercial port in the Western Pacific. The details remain classified. What is known is that an SDV launched from a host submarine more than 15 miles from the port. The transit took over 3 hours. The operators entered the harbor through a commercial shipping channel. They timed their approach to coincide with the acoustic noise of a departing cargo vessel. They used its propeller wash as sound cover. 2 swimmers exited the SDV 300 meters from the target ship. They approached the vessel's hull from below. They swam beneath the keel at a depth of 25 feet. They spent approximately 40 minutes underneath the ship. They conducted tasks that have never been publicly described. The swimmers returned to the SDV. The vehicle reversed course and made the return transit to the submarine. Total mission duration was approximately 8 hours. The operators were submerged for the entire period. No nation, no port authority, and no intelligence service reported detecting the operation. The mission was disclosed years later in a redacted briefing to the Senate Armed Services Committee. It was described as one of the most successful covert maritime intelligence operations conducted by Special Operations Forces in the 21st century. The SDV had carried its operators beneath a foreign warship in a foreign harbor. Let them do their work, and it brought them home. No surface vessel, no aircraft, and no satellite could have accomplished this mission. Only the Coffin Ride could. By 2010, the Mark 8 SDV had been in service for nearly 3 decades. Its battery life was limited. Its navigation systems were analog. Its operators suffered punishing cold exposure on every mission, but the vehicle kept deploying because nothing else could do what it did. In a joint exercise with Australian Special Air Service Regiment operators in the Coral Sea, the SDV team conducted a long-range infiltration against a defended island facility. The objective was to insert a reconnaissance team onto a beach defended by motion sensors, infrared cameras, and surface radar. The SDV launched at dusk from a Collins-class submarine. The transit was 9 miles through open ocean with a 2-knot cross current. The pilot compensated by adjusting heading every 3 minutes based on Doppler velocity readings. At 1 mile from the beach, the SDV descended to the seabed. It settled into a sandy depression at 45 feet. The 4 combat swimmers exited. They adjusted their rebreathers. They began a subsurface approach swim that took 42 minutes. They crawled onto the beach through the surf zone during a 15-second gap between infrared camera sweeps. The timing was calculated from intelligence provided by a pre-positioned unmanned underwater vehicle. That vehicle had mapped the sensor pattern 48 hours earlier. The reconnaissance team spent 4 hours ashore collecting imagery and signals intelligence. They exfiltrated through the same surf zone corridor. They swam back to the SDV. The vehicle made the return transit. Total elapsed time from launch to recovery, 11 hours. The exercise proved that SDV operations could be integrated with unmanned underwater systems for enhanced pre-mission intelligence. This concept would become central to the next generation of SEAL underwater operations. The SDV was old. Its technology was decades behind. But on that night, in that water, it was still the only vehicle in the world that could deliver 6 operators to a defended shore and bring them home without leaving a single trace. In 2015, SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1 conducted what many operators describe as the most demanding SDV mission of the modern era. The exercise took place in the Western Pacific during a major fleet exercise. The objective was to prove that SDV teams could still execute complex multi-phase operations. This was despite the failure of the Advanced SEAL Delivery System Replacement Program. The mission profile called for a 2-vehicle SDV formation to transit 14 miles. They would rendezvous at a subsurface waypoint. Then they would split to strike 2 separate targets simultaneously. This required precise underwater navigation coordination between 2 vehicles. They had no ability to communicate with each other during transit. Both SDVs launched from separate dry deck shelters on the same Ohio-class guided missile submarine. They navigated independently for 2 hours and 12 minutes. They arrived at the rendezvous point within 3 minutes of each other. That was a navigational accuracy of less than 50 meters over 14 miles. They used only Doppler sonar and dead reckoning. The teams struck their targets, a simulated fuel depot and a communications array, within a 4-minute window. All swimmers returned to their respective SDVs. Both vehicles made the return transit and docked successfully. Total immersion time, 7 hours and 31 minutes. It was the longest continuous SDV operation in recorded SEAL training history. 3 operators required IV fluids for dehydration. 2 were treated for moderate hypothermia. The mission proved that even without a next-generation replacement, the SDV force could still execute the missions that no other platform could touch. The old Coffin Ride still had one more dive in her. In 2019, a joint U.S.-Norwegian special operations exercise in the fjords of northern Norway tested a concept that had been theoretical for years. The concept was using an SDV as a forward sensor node in a contested maritime environment. The SDV launched from a Norwegian submarine and transited 8 miles into a fjord. The simulated adversary surface action group was anchored there. Instead of delivering swimmers to a target, the SDV itself became the mission. Its operators used a prototype passive acoustic array mounted on the vehicle's hull. They recorded the acoustic signatures of every vessel in the anchorage. For 90 minutes, the SDV sat motionless on the fjord floor at a depth of 110 feet. The operators recorded propeller cavitation patterns, machinery noise profiles, and hull resonance frequencies. They captured data on 6 surface combatants and 2 submarines. The data was stored on a hardened solid-state drive. It was delivered to Norwegian intelligence analysts within 4 hours of recovery. The acoustic signatures collected during this single mission provided more detailed data than 6 months of satellite-based intelligence gathering on the same vessels. The exercise proved that the SDV was not just an insertion vehicle. It was an intelligence collection platform. It could enter spaces no other asset could reach. Not a satellite. Not an unmanned vehicle. Not a full-size submarine. The SDV could sit silently in a harbor and listen. The ghost had become a spy. The SEAL delivery vehicle is not fast. It is not comfortable. It is not advanced. It is a fiberglass tube that floods with seawater. It demands its operators endure hours of freezing, blind, silent transit through some of the most dangerous waters on Earth. Yet, for more than 4 decades, it has accomplished missions that no other vehicle in any military's inventory can replicate. It has penetrated defended harbors. It has delivered operators beneath foreign warships. It has collected intelligence from spaces that satellites cannot see and submarines cannot reach. The SEALs who ride the SDV do not call it a vehicle. They call it a coffin. And every time they climb inside, they accept the same bargain: total discomfort in exchange for total invisibility. That bargain has never been broken. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We cover the most advanced military technology on the planet, one mission at a time.